Need to replace an old dishwasher with a new one? Today at the House of Hacks, we're going to do exactly that. For the last 6 months or so, every once in a while we'd come home and the dishwasher would have leaked. It was a random occurrence. It only happened on rare occasions. It was pretty frustrating to find. I spent quite a bit of time trying to track it down. I actually went so far as to pull the dishwasher out from the cabinet and put it up on 2x4s for a week, and we ran it that way to try to isolate where it was leaking. And of course, in that time, it never leaked. And my wife finally got frustrated with having it out in the middle of the kitchen and asked me to put it back. Last weekend, we came home from running errands and found it had leaked again. It had finished shortly before we got home, and I thought maybe it was still wet where it had been leaking. And so I immediately pulled it out from the cupboard. Couldn't find any leaks. I was able, though, to find kind of trace the water back from where it was wet on the floor and where it wasn't wet on the floor to kind of get the general region. And did some more investigation, pulled the flashlight out. And eventually I did find the kind of telltale signs of leaking water, where you kind of had that white, dried crustiness from water that had been leaking and had since dried. And in tracking it down, I found a seam in the tub that had some discoloration in it. And that was right where the water is coming out on the other side. And so obviously there's rust through in that seam, and there's really no repairing that kind of thing from a real practical standpoint. I could kind of hack it with some epoxy or silicone gel, but that's just kind of a stopgap measure, and eventually I'm going to have to replace the dishwasher. So I decided to go ahead and do that. To do this project, I think is going to require 3 tools. I may be wrong, but I'm thinking through the project. I think there's 3 things that we're going to need. There's a screwdriver that we'll need to disconnect it from the countertop, and also if there's electrical connections that have screws, they're probably going to be Phillips. I think that's the only thing that we need Phillips for. The water inlet is probably a compression fitting, which will use a 5/8 inch open end wrench. If it's not a compression fitting, it's probably a hose clamp, which again will use the screwdriver. And finally, I believe the drain has a spring clamp that we'll remove with pliers. I think that's all we need, 3 tools. If any more are required when I get into it, I'll talk about that in the process of needing them. The way this model dishwasher is held in is there's 2 screws that on the top that hold it to the countertop, and there's a dust panel on the bottom by the floor that needs to come off so we can move it around. Total of 4 screws to pull out, and then it should be able to just slide right out. Let's get to it. So you saw with the old dishwasher, it had kind of a built-in junction box in the bottom front corner that the electrical ran into. The new one has a separate junction box that is supposed to be mounted away from the dishwasher, and that has this cord that has an end that plugs into the dishwasher. From a mechanical standpoint, this is a lot easier because I'll have to cut off the old gnarly ends and get some new wire here, but there's some just some screw terminals in here that'll just screw right into. It'll be real quick and easy, but I don't really have a good place to mount this. The way the cupboards are designed, the closest place to mount this where it's going to be accessible is further away than the length of this cord. And so it's just going to kind of float around in the back there. Let's get this hooked up. The water hookup has been a little bit more challenging than I expected. The dishwasher has a 3/4 MPT fitting on the back of it, and my plumbing has a 3/8 inch flex pipe, and so it didn't work directly in there, obviously. So I had to go buy a fitting, especially for this project, that is a 3/4 inch NPT fitting to a 3/8 inch compression fitting. So I'm going to put this on, and first of all I need to cut off the old compression fitting on the piping because that can't be used again. Okay, now we're going to connect the drain. This comes from the dishwasher, and it has a section for either 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch drain pipe. This pipe is 3/4 inch, so we're going to put the hose clamp on the 3/4 inch section and push this in there until it's good and seated, and that's, I think, as far as it's going to go. And then we're going to put, it seems like it should go a little bit further, but maybe not. So now we put the hose clamp on and tighten it down. I must say I really like the old hose clamp where it was just a spring clamp. It was so much more convenient. Okay, now we get the joy of leveling it. It seems to be in there. Okay, all the water and drain stuff. Electrical seems good. It's pretty well centered. Now it just needs to get leveled and needs to get lifted up, actually. I've got probably almost an inch gap here at the top, but that's what the leveler feet are for. Okay, to turn this, we turn the feet on the right and left to level it side to side, and to level it front to back, there's a screw right here in the middle that you turn to get the front and back leveled. Okay, well, I finally got it done and in. That was a lot more work than I expected. The last dishwasher that I'd taken out was one I had also installed 10 years ago or so, probably 12, maybe 12 years ago. And it was really pretty simple. It was just straightforward. Take out the old, put in the new, and it was done. This one, there was some assembly required, as they say. I had to pick up that part from the Home Depot. I had to wire in things, was just a little bit more involved. And yeah, so it was just more work. It took a lot longer than I expected. And it took more tools than I expected. So the final tools: scissors to open packaging, level to level it, tube cutter to cut off the old compression fitting that I didn't need, a couple open-end wrenches, adjustable wrenches to level it, two Phillips and a straight screwdriver, wire cutters to trim up the wiring, and box knife to trim the insulation, and a 5/8 inch wrench to tighten up the water connection. Oh, and pliers to put in those little clips. The clips on this particular dishwasher, you could put them either on the tops or on the sides. So you had to install those, use pliers to do that. So that was it. All in all, it's not a tough job. It just took, looks like it probably took about 4 hours to do, and that included having to film and set up and stuff. So that slowed it down a little bit. But yeah, probably a good 3 hours to do this, even if I hadn't been filming. So that's it for this project. Thanks for joining me on our creative journey. Until next time, go make something. Perfection's not required, fun is.